How were pyramids built? Did they use elephants or carts to carry the stone? Or did aliens help them? But it looks like scientists finally have the answer.
Ever since the first studies of the Great Pyramid in Egypt have been made, researchers have been amazed.
Scientists from Cairo University, working alongside physicists from Japan and France, have confirmed that a second hidden chamber lies sealed inside the 4,500-year-old Great Pyramid of Giza, and no human being has entered it since the pyramid was built. That announcement ended a decade-long race to see inside the most studied structure in human history and opened a set of questions no one was prepared to answer. An international team of physicists, armed not with shovels but with particle detectors, has now confirmed that a second hidden chamber lies sealed inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. Not a structural gap, not a crack between limestone blocks, a deliberate architectural space that Khufu's engineers concealed from the world more than 4,500 years ago. Nobody has entered it. Nobody has seen inside it. And if a new generation of Muon-Scanning technology hadn't sent cosmic ray particles falling through 2,300,000 limestone blocks, we would still have no idea it was there.
That's not true.
From satellite. It's not true.
No.
So what are you saying, that they're lying? So
They're
this
lying.
right here.
They're completely lying.
But if they're showing, using these techniques, things that we know that you discovered that absolutely exist, what makes you believe those scientists rather than these guys from Italy?
because because the scientists are scientists.
Well, these are scientists as well.
They are not all the people work with me. The Scan Pyramid project, they said this is bullshit.
that are saying that they can see kilometers into the ground.
The chamber's existence is not, at this point, the real mystery. What it might contain is, and the answer to that question, if it comes, could force a complete rewrite of everything archaeology believes it understands about the greatest building ever constructed. That discovery was only the beginning. What came next changed everything. To understand what has just happened, you need to understand what we thought we knew about the Great Pyramid, and precisely how incomplete that knowledge always was. Khufu, the second pharaoh of Egypt's 4th dynasty, ordered construction of his pyramid around 2550 BC. His workers, not slaves, but organized teams of paid laborers, as modern archaeology has confirmed through excavated worker villages at Giza, spent approximately 27 years stacking around 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite into the most geometrically precise large structure ever built in the ancient world. At completion, the pyramid stood 481 feet tall and weighed an estimated 6 million tons. No human-made structure would surpass its height for nearly 3,800 years. We know a handful of chambers inside it. The subterranean chamber cut deep into the bedrock below the base. The Queen's Chamber, which was almost certainly never used for a queen. Its name is a later medieval Arabic label. The King's Chamber, where an empty red granite sarcophagus sits in near total darkness. Its lid missing, its original contents unknown. And the Grand Gallery, an extraordinary 8-meter-high corbelled passageway, its walls rising in 7 ascending steps toward the King's Chamber above, so precisely cut that scholars still argue about its function. For decades, Egyptologists assumed this was the complete picture, a complex building, an engineering wonder beyond comprehension, but a known one. Then, in 2015, an international scientific team launched a project that would quietly dismantle that certainty. The project was called Scan Pyramids. It was designed and led by Cairo University alongside the French Heritage Innovation Preservation Institute, CHIP. Their instruments were not the picks and brushes of traditional archaeology. They were muon detectors, devices borrowed from particle physics. Imagine this. You are standing inside the Queen's Chamber, yet the air is warm and dense and still. It carries the smell of ancient limestone and something older, a mineral closeness that makes the walls feel less like stone and more like compressed time. Around you on the chamber floor, the team has positioned a series of flat rectangular detectors, wired and blinking. Outside the pyramid, more detectors have been set up along the north face, angled up toward the interior. And above you, through 70 meters of solid limestone, cosmic rays from deep space are arriving every second, sending a constant, invisible rain of particles through the pyramid. Those particles are muons. They are elementary particles, heavier cousins of the electron, created in the upper atmosphere when high-energy cosmic rays strike air molecules. They fall through the sky in their millions, passing through almost anything. A rock, concrete, flesh, but dense rock absorbs more muons than light rock, and light rock absorbs far more than empty air. If you map where the muons land and measure how many arrived from each direction, you can effectively X-ray the building, detecting voids and spaces from the inside without drilling a single hole. The first scanned pyramid surveys produced intriguing data. The second round of testing told a completely different story. On November 2, 2017, the Scanned Pyramids team published a paper in the journal Nature. The discovery it described was immediately recognized as the most significant find inside the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. 3 separate teams of physicists had independently scanned the pyramid using 3 different muon detection technologies. Researchers from Nagoya University in Japan had used nuclear emulsion films placed inside the Queen's chamber. Scientists from Japan's High Energy Accelerator Research Organization, KEK, deployed scintillator hodoscope detectors in the same chamber. France's Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission, CEA, positioned gas detector telescopes outside the pyramid along the north face, watching muons arrive at an angle after passing through the entire structure. All 3 teams, using completely different instruments from completely different positions, detected the same signal: a massive, previously unknown void located directly above the Grand Gallery, at least 30 meters in length, with a cross-sectional area comparable to the Grand Gallery itself, meaning this was not a thin cavity or an architectural crevice. This was a room, a sealed, silent architectural space sitting in the center of the most famous building in human history, apparently unknown since the day the pyramid was closed. They named it the Scanned Pyramid's Big Void. The scientific response was largely astonished. Peter Dermanuelian of Harvard University, one of the world's leading Egyptologists, called it an exciting new discovery and potentially a major contribution to our knowledge about the Great Pyramid. Particle physicist Lee Thompson of the University of Sheffield addressed the question of certainty directly. 3 independent teams, 3 separate technologies, 3 overlapping data sets, all pointing at the same location. The finding, Thompson said, was very robust. Not everyone agreed. The Egyptologist Zahi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister of Antiquities and perhaps the most prominent single voice in the field, was emphatic. He told the New York Times the team had found nothing and that their paper offered nothing to Egyptology. 0. His argument was architectural. The Great Pyramid's internal construction naturally includes small air gaps between limestone courses, placed deliberately to reduce the overall weight load. The Scanned Pyramids team, Hawass argued, had simply mistaken one of these structural features for a discovery. The big void remained sealed, inaccessible, a 30-meter chamber sitting undisturbed above the Grand Gallery, with its nature contested in journals and at conferences. While tourists walked beneath it every single day, the data was clear, the implications were anything but. Yet the pyramid held its position. The scientists went back to their instruments. Then came March 2023, and the story moved in a direction no one had fully anticipated. The Scanned Pyramids team published new findings in Nature Communications. This time the target was different. Not the big void above the Grand Gallery, but a smaller anomaly that had appeared in earlier scans near the pyramid's north face. Using refined muon measurements collected over years of additional scanning, the team was finally able to map this second void's precise geometry. The result was a corridor, 9 meters long, 2 meters wide, 2 meters tall, positioned just behind a distinctive arrangement of chevron-shaped limestone blocks that has been visible on the pyramid's exterior for 4 millennia. Here is what makes that specific detail remarkable. Anyone who has stood at the base of the Great Pyramid and looked up at the north face has seen those chevrons, pairs of angled stone blocks set in a V shape. Clearly intentional, clearly different from the flat coursework surrounding them. Egyptologists had debated their purpose for generations. Some argued they were structural, others argued they were decorative. Some suggested they marked the original entrance corridor and the chevrons existed to redistribute the massive weight of the stone above the opening. The Muon data suggested something else. The chevrons were not just load-bearing, they appeared to be guarding the entrance to a hidden space. When the Scanned Pyramids team inserted an endoscope through a small existing gap in the pyramid's exterior masonry, they became the first living people in 4,500 years to see inside that corridor. The footage showed smooth-walled stone, cut with precision, filled floor to wall with fine, undisturbed sand. And at the far end of the corridor, approximately 9 meters in, the feed encountered a sealed wall, a wall that may itself be a door. They withdrew the endoscope. The sand had not moved in 45 centuries. Whatever is beyond that wall has waited all this time. If you are finding this as fascinating as we do, a like genuinely helps this channel continue investigating stories like this one. Now, back to the scan that may answer everything. Because parallel to what Scanned Pyramids has been doing, a different team of scientists has been building something far more powerful. The project is called the Exploring the Great Pyramid Mission, EGP, and it is led by scientists at Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory in Illinois, known as Fermilab, in collaboration with researchers at the University of Virginia and the University of Chicago. The mission's lead scientist, Alan Bross, became interested in the pyramid directly after the 2017 Big Void announcement. He reached out to Mark Lehner, the University of Chicago archaeologist widely considered the world's foremost technical expert on Giza's construction, and the two began planning a scan unlike anything previously attempted. Here is the critical difference. Scanned Pyramids instruments were sensitive enough to detect large voids from fixed positions inside the pyramid. But they could only generate two-dimensional images, essentially a series of shadow photographs taken from specific angles. The EGP mission has been engineering a Muon telescope system that, by the team's own published estimate, will be 100 times more sensitive than any instrument previously used at the pyramid. 100 times. Their detectors, housed in enormous temperature-controlled shipping containers, each 12 meters long, will be repositioned systematically around the pyramid's entire base, capturing Muon data from every angle simultaneously and producing what will be, for the first time in history, a true three-dimensional tomographic image of the complete interior. Not a map of known chambers with anomalies flagged. A complete picture. Every void, every passage, every density variation in 6 million tons of ancient stone rendered visible. Ralph Ehrlich of the University of Virginia, leading the telescope development, ran detailed computer simulations before the mission moved to physical construction. His models confirmed the system would have sufficient resolution to detect not just large chambers, but smaller passageways, architectural features, and any additional spaces the earlier surveys were too limited to resolve. The results matched expectations precisely. The design would work. The Exploring the Great Pyramid mission, the team wrote in their technical paper, will be transformational with respect to the field of cosmic ray muon imaging. That is the language of scientists who believe they are about to see something definitive. At this point, the researchers believed they had a clear roadmap. They were not yet accounting for what additional scanning data would reveal about the scale of what they were looking for. The plateau grew quieter as the data grew stranger, because the big void, that 30-meter-long sealed chamber above the Grand Gallery, is not yet fully understood. Its precise orientation, its true shape, and whether it connects to any other interior space remain open questions. As data has been collected from additional scanning angles, statistically persistent anomalies have continued to appear in locations that do not correspond to the pyramid's known architecture. In 2024, a separate research team working near the pyramid's eastern base, using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, detected an L-shaped structure buried beneath the sand, approximately 10 meters by 15 meters in footprint, positioned between half a meter and 2 meters below the surface. Published in the journal Archaeological Prospection, the study also reported a deeper anomaly beneath the L shape. a larger underground area approximately 93 square meters in extent. Is it connected to the pyramid? Is it a separate ritual space, a tomb, a construction-era feature? Egyptian National Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics scientists involved in the study stated plainly that the anomaly's full extent and purpose remain undetermined. They called for further investigation using muon imaging. In 2025, an Italian-Scottish research team, led by Professor Corrado Malanga of the University of Pisa and Dr. Filippo Biondi of the University of Strathclyde, published synthetic aperture radar scan results for the adjacent pyramid of Khufu. Their data, they claimed, showed evidence of vast underground structures, chambers potentially 80 meters wide, and networks of pillar-like features extending deep beneath the Giza Plateau. The Egyptological establishment responded with sharp caution. The methodology is contested. The claims are not yet peer-reviewed to the standard of the Scan Pyramids discoveries, but the signal is consistent with a pattern now emerging from multiple independent research efforts, using multiple different instruments. Yet across multiple years, the Giza Plateau holds structures that conventional archaeology has not yet accounted for. This is the detail that keeps researchers up at night. Let us stop here, because we need to think carefully about what it would mean if these discoveries continue to be confirmed. The Great Pyramid has been studied, measured, mapped, debated, and theorized about for 2,000 years. In the 3rd century BC, Herodotus wrote about its construction, though modern scholars believe his account was secondhand at best. Napoleon's Scientific Commission measured it in 1798. In the 19th century, British archaeologist William Flinders Petrie conducted the first precise modern survey of its dimensions. Tolerances, so exact they still hold up under scrutiny today. In all that time, the pyramid was understood to contain 3 main chambers, a series of connecting passages, and nothing structurally significant beyond those known features. The empty granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber was assumed to be Khufu's intended burial vessel, though his mummy has never been found, not anywhere. Now consider what the muon data and the corroborating ground-penetrating surveys are beginning to suggest is actually inside. The first interpretation, the conservative one and the one favored by most mainstream Egyptologists, is purely structural. The big void above the Grand Gallery is an intentional architectural void, built specifically to redistribute the immense downward pressure of the pyramid's upper mass and prevent the Grand Gallery beneath from collapsing. This is a genuine and credible engineering hypothesis. The pyramid's builders used exactly this technique elsewhere. The corbelled vault above the king's chamber was engineered on the same principle, stacking successively smaller granite slabs to direct load outward and prevent catastrophic crushing of the room below. In this reading, the big void is not a room at all. It is a structural solution, brilliant, intentional, and empty of anything except the will of ancient engineers. A second interpretation is more uncomfortable. Some scholars argue that the big void's placement, directly above the Grand Gallery, at the structural and spatial heart of the pyramid, is too architecturally deliberate to be explained by engineering alone. The Grand Gallery itself has no confirmed structural function. It is elaborate, finished with extraordinary care, and deeply unexplained. While its 8-meter height is architecturally unnecessary for anything related to moving a sarcophagus, if the void above it was built with comparable intentionality, then this vertical axis, Grand Gallery below, sealed void above, may represent something cosmological rather than mechanical. Ancient Egyptian religious architecture was organized along vertical symbolic lines: the sky, the living earth, and the duat, the underworld where the dead awaited resurrection. Might this internal spine be a spatial embodiment of that cosmology? A ritual axis built in stone? It is not a wild interpretation. Egyptian temples, tombs, and religious structures across 3,000 years of history were oriented, dimensioned, and organized according to theological principles rather than practical ones. The third interpretation, the one no mainstream Egyptologist will commit to publicly, but which the physical data now makes structurally possible, is the burial theory. Khufu, the most powerful man in the ancient world, built the largest structure in human history, and apparently arranged for his own burial to remain completely unverified for 4,500 years. Every confirmed chamber in the Great Pyramid has been found empty of any royal burial. No mummy, no grave goods, no canopic jars. The king's chamber's sarcophagus was open and empty when it was first rediscovered in the 9th century AD. If the Big Void is an architectural chamber, and the 3 independent Muon datasets say it is, and if the north face corridor leads beyond its sealed wall to something connected, and then we have not yet ruled out the possibility that somewhere inside these sealed spaces is exactly what the pyramid was built for. A burial no one has entered since the limestone was cut and fitted and sealed over it. Something that has been waiting in a silence no human sound has touched since 2550 BC. There is something almost impossible to absorb in that thought. Consider what it means for a structure to hold a secret for 45 centuries. The Roman Empire rose and fell in roughly a quarter of the time that the Big Void has sat undisturbed. The entirety of recorded Western history, Greece, Rome, the medieval period, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, both world wars, the space age, the internet, is a thin surface layer on top of the silence that existed inside that chamber. As the builders of the Great Pyramid are 4 times more ancient to us than the fall of Rome is to a person alive today. They worked without iron tools, without written engineering tables, without cranes or pulleys as we understand them. They achieved dimensional tolerances that would challenge a modern construction project. And then they sealed their work, walked away, left it to time. Whatever lies inside the void that the Muon detectors have confirmed, whether structural, ritual, royal, or something that requires a category we haven't yet invented, it was placed there by people who had no reason to expect it would ever be found. The tools that found it did not exist until the 20th century. The scientific methodology that confirmed it did not exist until the 21st. The collaboration that produced these results spans 4 countries and 2 continents and involves instruments designed originally to study nuclear reactors and subatomic particles. The endoscope that glimpsed the sand inside the North Face corridor was the first human-made object to enter that space since the last Egyptian worker pressed it closed and walked away into a world that no longer exists. We talk about archaeology as a discipline concerned with the past, but what it actually produces is a very specific kind of present. The moment when something sealed becomes visible again. That moment, for at least one of these hidden chambers, is now. For whatever lies beyond the sealed end of the corridor, and for whatever fills the 30-meter void above the Grand Gallery, that moment has not yet arrived. The Exploring the Great Pyramid mission is still finalizing its telescope arrays. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities continues to oversee and regulate all access and scanning permissions. The endoscope footage from the North Face corridor has been studied, analyzed, and published, and the Big Void sits exactly where 3 independent Muon datasets said it was. 30 meters of sealed darkness above the Grand Gallery, with no scientific consensus yet on what it contains or what should be done about it. There is a version of this story that ends cleanly. The EGP mission's 100 times more powerful scan produces a full 3D map of the interior. Every anomaly resolves into a known architectural feature. The Big Void is structural. The North Face corridor terminates at a blank wall. The underground anomalies are tombs from later periods. The Great Pyramid is, as Zahi Hawass has long maintained, fully explained. There is another version where the next scan produces a signal so clear and so undeniable that every institution with an Egyptology department begins a quiet, urgent conversation about what it means for the field, where the corridor beyond that sealed wall leads to something that alters the specific story we have told ourselves about Khufu, about the 4th dynasty, about what the most powerful people of the ancient world understood about death, architecture, and permanence. And there is a third version, perhaps the most honest one, where the scan resolves the Big Void's shape and confirms its dimensions, and what it reveals inside raises not answers but a generation's worth of new questions. where what the pyramid contains is not what Egyptologists predicted, but is also not what the alternative theorists imagined, where it is something genuinely unexpected, something that requires the field to do what the best science always does: go back to the beginning, look again, and think harder. The moons are still falling, the detectors are still collecting, the corridor still ends at a sealed wall, and somewhere above the Grand Gallery, in a space that has not heard a human sound since the Bronze Age, the Great Pyramid is keeping its secret with the same perfect, enormous silence it has maintained for 4,500 years. What do you think is on the other side of that wall?